Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, and as we continue our series entitled Self-Esteem, today we raise the question, how to know, or how do you know, when self-esteem is low? According to the National Institute of Health's finding, in terms of exposure to whatever the situation might be, especially in early development of life, scientists have long known that people with certain psychological traits or resources can fare better in challenging situations. Three of the most widely studied psychological resources known to human beings are optimism, self-esteem, and mastery, which is the feeling that you can master your environment and achieve what you choose to achieve. These are all good predictors of a person's physical and psychological health. These three resources, those of optimism, self-esteem, and mastery, have been shown to help people, whether stressful, whether they're being beat back by depression. These psychological traits have helped people manage and weather almost any storm that life can throw at them. Because these psychological resources tend to run in families, however, scientists, researchers at the National Institute of Health have suspected that learning self-esteem and possessing self-esteem, embracing self-esteem, can also be traced back to your home environment in terms of how well has that really been cultivated. The National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, which is also a division of the National Institute of Health, completed a study in early 2000 on fathers and self-esteem, publishing it in the June of 2000 issue of the Journal of American Psychology. Interviews with these fathers were conducted when their children were 6 months old, 15 months old, 24 months old, and 36 months of age. Two findings. Fathers who had a high sense of self-esteem were more involved in the lives of their children, especially fathers being involved with daughters. Men who were found with lower self-esteem, yes, they were involved superficially or minimally with their sons, but they were more reluctant to be engaged and involved in the lives at these early ages of 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, and 36 months with their daughters. The second finding was fathers who had lower self-esteem had a higher tendency toward being hostile in the home, more depressed, and not as well balanced psychologically. Interesting findings almost 13 years ago by the National Institute of Health in terms of looking at low self-esteem and its impact on fathers and their parenting and their relational abilities even within a home. So how do you know when self-esteem is low? Typically there's going to be self-degradation and criticism of self. And if there's self-degradation and criticism of self, guess what? It flows into degrading others and being highly critical of others. Hypersensitivity to criticism. People can say something with the best of intentions, and when people have low self-esteem, it will almost inevitably be taken the wrong way. Difficulty making decisions. There's a fear of making a solid decision because how will this work out if it's not a good decision? How will others like it? How will others perceive it? difficulty with setting goals or working toward achieving them. Because, again, it's going to address that person's self-worth in that mind. Motivation that is out of sync with abilities. People will try to do things that they do not have the capacity to do, and yet they will refrain from things that they do have the capacity to do because they don't see those things that are within their scope of accomplishment as being things that will bolster in their mind their self-image and their self-esteem. They have a very defensive attitude, a very hostile nature, excessive feelings of guilt, but those guilt feelings are sometimes suppressed, and people don't understand that internally the individual is wrestling with guilt because externally they are overcompensating for their lack of self-esteem. Compulsive people, pleasing or caregiving people, they're very compulsive in their actions. They do things under the cloak of caring for other people, but deep down inside they have a very low self-worth. In the book of Exodus, chapter 4, verses 10, 11, and 12, Moses was an individual who struggled inside of himself about some impediments. In terms of his ability, Moses was a deliverer. He had delivered an Egyptian out of the hand of an unjust, or he had delivered a Hebrew out of the hands of an unjust Egyptian. The following day he came out and he broke up a dispute between two Hebrews. But in the life of Moses, because he had so many challenges, there was something going on inside of him where there was at least a degree of uncertainty about his strong abilities, which he was very competent in performing. So by the time you look at the text of Exodus 4, verses 10, 11, and 12, God has spoke to Moses at the burning bush, and God has directed Moses to go back into Egypt and bring a whole nation out. Listen to Moses' response. Moses said unto the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither have I ever been, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant. He says, Lord, I have never had the ability to speak, and even as you're speaking to me now, you have not changed that impediment inside of me. And if you send me back into this area to speak to someone, I just don't know if I have the self-esteem and the imagery that I can do it. And the Lord said, Moses, who made your mouth? Because Moses says to God, I am slow of speech and I'm slow of tongue. God's response is, but Moses, if I give you value, if I bolster you, and if I say you can do it, then you need to look at the one who made your mouth. No matter how you say you are incompetent in this area, if you trust me, if you allow me to direct you, and if you just go in, I made your mouth. Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say according to your ability to speak it. And you know how God ends that story? He assigns Moses' brother Aaron to be his mouthpiece. Whenever you're dealing with low self-esteem, surrender that to God, and God always has a resource to bolster you into being who he would have you to be. I'll see you back in class again next time. Don't be late, and don't skip class.